On October the 30th, 1972, something rather special happened at the world famous London Palladium in the very heart of London. It was the very first appearance on stage for the Jackson 5 in front of British royalty. But there's a bigger story behind that. As ever, let me explain. Morning, lovely to see you. Thank you so much on a windy day here. Yes, I hope you're keeping well. We'll have a lovely wave. You all right? Thank you so much, as I say, for your time. I'm so glad that you enjoy these historical sort of stories that I managed to find, track down, get from people I interview, that sort of stuff. It's so refreshing, isn't it, to find out something new. And the whole point of putting them together actually is so we have something to think, oh, I didn't know that. And I found that from, reading your comments when you say, oh, I lived next door to there, or my mum worked for so-and-so, or, there were a Revlon girl or an Avon lady or a beauty queen or something. You think, wow, gosh, I didn't know they did that in that day. It's always good to stretch the brain, isn't it? To sort of open your mind, get yourself off thinking something more negative, particularly in the world we live in today, and finding interesting stories. Now, it's a bit like this. The Royal Variety Performance, as I've told you many times, chums, is the big thing. Used to be. If I'm honest now, I'm not so sure it is. It seems more like a promotional aspect rather than something you think, wow, I've achieved that. Even though it's wonderful to appear in front, say, of the Prince and Princess of Wales, Catherine and William, it had or seemed to have more prestige way back, say, in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, that sort of stuff. But again, a smaller world, right? And we saw many big stars. Now, the big stars, of course, of 1972 were the Jackson 5. Well, actually, there was a bigger star, Liberace, right? And according to a very good source, Liberace at points thought about teaming up and playing the piano for the Jackson 5. What a combination that would have been. I like Liberace. I love the Jackson 5. Many years ago, I actually interviewed Michael Jackson. He was staying at the Lanesborough Hotel in London, which I think was a hospital, actually. I think people will remind me of that. I think it was a hospital originally. And it was the big place, where suddenly all the stars were staying. Perfectly delightful, very, very polite, just a nice guy. Whatever the other stories are, you have to say what you find. I also met him on the very final time he came over to London for the This Is It tour. Seemed to be a totally different character, but that's showbiz, isn't it? Still nice guy to me, but just, slightly frayed, shall we say. But way back in 72, they were the big stars, as I say, of the London Palladium. Now, what was interesting was, later on in his career, Michael Jackson, now the superstar, megastar of mega hits of things like Thriller, Off the Wall, Beat It, Wanna Be Starting Something, we all know those hits, right? Well, they wanted him back, naturally, and he was very keen. Now, one of the people that was very keen and instrumental in trying to persuade him to come back for the Royal Variety Performance was none other than the late and beautiful Princess Diana. He adored her, she adored him, they got on well. Diana loved her pop music, as we know, and loved all the megastars of the day like George Michael, Michael Jackson, Dire Straits, Duran Duran. She just liked them all. Nothing wrong with that, a young lady with pop musical tastes. Now, what was interesting was Michael Jackson was very keen to actually appear on the Royal Variety Performance because the first time around they'd actually appeared in front of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And Michael Jackson always said his ambition was still to appear in front of Queen Elizabeth. He adored our British royal family. And whenever he came over to London, and I have this from a guy that literally also was his PR person over here, he would buy all the trinkets and things from Buckingham Palace shop. Just loved it, you know what I mean? So you kind of think, wow, it must have been strange to see Michael Jackson going around buying all the trinkets from the Buck Palace shop, don't you think? Wonderful. But what was also fascinating was Michael said, yeah, he'd like to do it. But one of the people he wanted to appear on the show with was the British legendary comedian Benny Hill. Now, Benny Hill and Michael Jackson were firm fans of each other, and Michael had an idea to try and get Benny on a video of his, very similar to using the voice of Vincent Price on Thriller. And he wanted Benny to be various characters, that he was famous for, Fred Scuttle, things like that. And they liked the idea, and that was actually a work in progress. But Benny Hill could not do the Royal Variety Performance because he said it'd been many years since he'd been on stage and he still suffered from stage fright. Well, I knew Benny Hill quite a bit, actually, saw him on a regular basis, and he had terrible stage fright. That's why he loved the medium of telly more so. Michael Jackson, though, said no, this would be the fun thing. He just didn't want to come on and do his usual Michael Jackson melody of hits and all that sort of stuff. He wanted to have something that was going to be memorable. He admired Benny Hill, literally up there as one of the greatest comic turns ever. But sadly for Benny, even for Michael Jackson, he couldn't make it. And that's the reason why Michael Jackson and Benny Hill never actually appeared together in front of Queen Elizabeth II. Always good to learn something, right? Neil Sean in the very heart of Yorkshire.